October 11th, 2019. In case you can't tell by all the stuff, we're in the process of switching out to winter mode for the greenhouse. And wanted to paint this stove last year, but I got it in late November, so conditions weren't really conducive to painting it, and I wanted to get the heat cranking right away when I got it. But now, we're in October. It's low to mid 60s daytime. Tonight's overnight low is supposed to be 49, so a little chilly, but not so cold that I have to have the greenhouse stove in there. So decided I'm going to pull it out, grind it off with the grinder, hit it with a coat of paint, make it look nice. So just thought I would get a shot of it before we go into it. You can see there's a lot of rust and pitting, but hopefully we'll make it look beautiful again after we go over it with the grinder. Just thought I'd get a shot. Well, alright, that was easier and faster than I expected. Bought a new wire wheel disc for the DeWalt grinder, the big grinder, and boy, ripped right through that. I think it maybe took me 20 minutes to go over the whole thing. Spent more time swatting yellow jackets away than I did anything else. Anyway, she's ready to go. I'm going to shoot her up with some paint, let her dry, cure fire her out here, and then move her back in hopefully by later tonight, and actually be back online and heating by later tonight. Anyway, excited the stove is going to look nice, all cleaned up and painted. Okay, it's all done. Just kidding. This is the first coat. Most people who haven't spray painted probably don't know this, but when you spray paint, especially a metal surface, what you want to do is put a very light coat on that basically puts speckles of paint on, and let that coat dry, and then you go a second coat and sometimes a third coat, and that gives you a nice smooth coat, and it gives the paint an opportunity to actually adhere to the surface you're working with. So this is the first coat. I'm going to let this dry like 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll come back and do the final coat, and it should look pretty sweet when I'm done with it. Anyway, just thought I'd catch the next phase. Okay, so I went through the whole can of paint with the second coat. Kind of still needs a little more, I think. I'm going to go pick up another can of paint, which sucks because I really didn't want to do that, but I want to make sure this paint job looks really nice and sticks well. And we're 80% of the way there, so I might as well go get a little bit more paint and finish it. And we got to let it dry and cure for a little bit, and then we'll bake her on. Anyway, it's coming along nice. It's going to look really nice all done. Look at that, you can actually see the scene on the front of the stove again. Sweet! Alright, I'll have to get more paint. Well, alright, I just finished, well, really third coat. I actually did 3 coats because I had to pick up the extra can of paint. So I figured I'd go heavy on it. And it's drying now. Fortunately, this paint dries pretty quickly, so I'll probably give it like an hour or so to really dry up decent. And then I'll go ahead and fire the stove up and bake it on. But I have to say, this is an awesome stove, and I'm really stoked to have it finally also looking nice. So, yeah. Alright, I'll give you an update in a sec. I smell paint burning. She's lit. As I'm sure you can hear by that nice draft roar that the stove produces. Just got her going a minute ago, so she's not really hot yet. But she's headed that way fast. Oh man, she can look so nice. I'll bet that fly gets off of there soon. Yeah, so anyway, so just temporary stovepipe up for now. And I got a new 90 elbow for the stove because the old one was rotting out pretty bad. And it's kind of chewed up. So this one actually fits on the stove. That's some tight fit, boy. It took a little finagling to get it on. But it'd be a nice, tight, clean fit for burning. And I smell paint a bacon, so looks like we're headed for the cure. And this is literally about a minute later. You can hear how fast this draft picks up in this stove. It's amazing. And I'm not going to dial it back yet, but when you dial those two knobs back and reduce the air inlet, once you get some heat built up, it goes into this like rocket flare sound. I'll show you in a minute. Starting to reach it. Watch this, I'll give it a little air. Yeah. Myself a little smoke. Hear it take off when you start to get up to that like critical gasification heat temperature. This thing, I've barely been able to run those knobs dialed out one turn from dead closed. Except for the night we got down to frost, I was able to go to 1.5 turns on each. So this thing puts out tremendous heat. There we go. Chuff, 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 chuff. You can actually hear it drawing fresh air directly into the fire. The gas from that bursting into flame and creating expansion and slowing the intake down, and then that cycle repeating. This stove is about as close to a rocket stove as a regular wood stove can be. It's actually pretty close to it in the way that it burns wood too. It tends to actually burn the wood from this end back to the other end, which is a nice efficient way to burn wood. That way you don't have this whole mass on fire smoking. You're just burning part of the wood at a time, and that makes for much better efficiency. So I guess I'm ranting and raving about the Sierra stove. And I don't know if you can see that in the low light, but we finally are getting the stovepipe up hot enough. That's a new elbow on there, and that's starting to cook and cure its paint off, so that's good. But the rest of the stove hasn't quite reached that temperature yet, but you can see the top starting to discolor a bit, or cook up. So we're getting there, and I can definitely smell paint cooking and curing off it. And there's pretty good heat coming off it. I wish this camera had infrared. Well. Whew, oh yeah, definitely smell it. Wow. Alright, there we go. We're smoking off the top now, and also off the sides. don't know if you can see it as well off the sides, but that's a good sign. And you can see one spot in that pipe is glowing orange. Yeah, we're making good heat now. Only been burning maybe 15 minutes. So that's another nice thing about this stove. Cold to hot heat production in 15 minutes. And that, you know, I didn't put like super kindling. I didn't really set that kindling up well. That wood is kind of green. You can hear it sizzling. If I did that with dry firewood, it's probably more like 5 minutes. So, yeah. Anyway, glad to see that that is curing. That's good, because we don't want that smoking off like that in the greenhouse with the plants, or for the air I'm breathing. So I would say if you're painting a wood stove, I would take it outside, use a good grinder wheel like I did with the wire wheel, grind off all the rust, dirt, get down to a surface, then paint it, and then heat cure it like this outside, and then you don't have all those wicked, horrible vapors and fumes in your home or greenhouse or whatever you're putting the stove into. So, you know, just 2 cents from the Pharmacy Seeds Network. She's running really hot now. I just thought I'd show this one last clip of this. You can really hear it. Basically backdrafting. I'm going to roll these knobs down now and contain this heat and just let it slow bake and cure now that we're up to a good temperature. And that should help spread the heat around to the lower surfaces and front door and all that kind of stuff. Okay, dialed it back to 3 and 3 on each side. Nice steady burn now. She's making good heat. You can hear it expanding. And I can feel heat radiating off of that now. Beautiful. Let her burn out. Then she's cured and back in the greenhouse. Of course, I'll be getting it set up in there so I can just plop it in, plug it in, and fire it back up. Should be back functional by later tonight, I would think. Well, those are measured within approximation and set pretty much dead level with each other. Left to right, back to front, and block to block. So let the stove finish burning out and cool down. We'll bring her back in, set it up, do some final leveling, and then we're pretty much good to go. Alright, I got my headlight, but I need to put new batteries in it. But I think you can see the differences in discoloration, especially between the leg, which obviously wouldn't get as hot, and the side of the stove. And it's more notable here in the front, like caps versus the front of the door, that kind of thing. And over here on the side, you can see where there was like a cold corner there from ashes. So you can really distinguish the difference between the cured paint and the uncured paint. Just thought I'd show that. And sorry for the bad focus there. And I'll get you some better video once it's installed, but it's still cooling at the moment. So, still fuming off a little bit, and didn't really want to bring that in the greenhouse, so I figured I'd do one last hot burn. I think you can see how fast that smoke is coming out of there. She's cranking. And certainly you can hear and see there's a pretty good fire going in there. I threw 3 more like small sticks of maple in there, and then a couple of pieces of dry maple bark, which is what's caught now. And she's climbing out real hot. So I'm just going to let her burn through this, and hopefully that'll finish off our cure. Still not quite there on this lower corner, but you can see it's coming now that I got the ash off of the back corner there. And most of the rest of it looks pretty good. The bottom of the back has still got a little bit to go. Obviously the legs aren't going to get fully cured anytime soon, but try and minimize the fuming off as much as possible by cooking it off. I suspect this last super hot burn will do the job. That thing is nearly glowing with heat. I don't know if you can see that on the camera or not, but I sure kind of feel a heat wave coming off of there. Alright, cooled and imported. Set on 2 cinder blocks to get a little more height for our later addition to thermal convective circulation through the thermal mass tank. We needed a little more height. That should make our height. And set level front to back pretty much. And we'll go 90 out of that. And we're still level side to side pretty much. Alrighty, time to install stovepipes and the pot and relight. Yep, there we go. Confirming the level. Nice and level. Filling. I'm going to put the weight on first, make sure we don't have any critical collapse before we get any real heat chugging along in the stove. Need to get a couple of new, well, at least one new piece of stovepipe. This one's pretty worn and sad, but managed to get it together and reasonably plumb. Probably shimmy this around a little bit more later on once I settle things out a bit more, but pretty happy to be getting ready to fire it back up. So I'm going to do that. Yep, we're just about full. We're lit and burning. Rock and roll. Back in service at 0026. Oh yeah. Okay. She's lit and running. Turbo's on. I think that's it for now. If you have any questions or comments, please do so down below. Thanks for watching the Pharmacy Seeds Network.